Alright, this is how to cast a concrete paver turtle for like a walkway or just decorative pavers with the plastic mold off of Amazon that comes from the Ukraine. Took about probably a week to get here, but I'm going to try to walk you through it real quick and discuss some lessons learned. So first, you're going to want to oil the mold. Now you can just use a WD-40 or this, spray it on. I'll show you that, and then or you can use just regular motor oil. I recommend you have an old toothbrush, and I'll show you how to use that if you can't already guess. You're going to need some kind of mixing bucket, and proportions, I just kind of mix it by eye, but for those of you first starting out that need a little more accurate or less vague instructions than what they tell you on the bag of concrete, I just use this big can. It's a 30-ounce can, or one of these big Rotel cans, and then of course some Quickcrete. I used a high-strength concrete mix. They make like a fast-setting one, but I didn't want to go with the fast-setting one in case I made a mistake. This is a little more forgiving. You have a little more time to deal with, but if you're trying to make a whole bunch in a short period of time, you might want to go with the quick set stuff. But what I've got is the high strength stuff. So a 50-pound bag makes about 4 turtles, or it takes a quarter of a bag to make a turtle, but actually it takes just a little bit more. And you want to start making a little bit less, because you don't want to have to throw away excess concrete every time. So I start out with a little bit less, and then the last bit to fill it up to, I don't know, maybe a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch from the lip here. I just sprinkle some dry concrete and then work it in. So the other thing you might want, it's not necessary, is some chicken wire, and I had some around, but you don't have to have it, but it does help keeping the legs and the head from falling off later. I just cut 2 rows of the chicken wire off with some wire snippers, and then what I do is on the ends of the chicken wire, the ends with the straight end edge there, I use that for the head part, because then what you can do is you can stretch it and shape it to the head, and I just lay it in there like that. And then I recommend you cutting the pieces and fitting them into the mold before you pour the concrete. That way you're not fumbling around trying to cut them and fit them after you pour the concrete in there. And you only want to fill it halfway, put the chicken wire in, and then fill the rest of it. So let's get started. I'm going to oil the mold, and I also recommend you putting, once you get the pieces chicken wire made, setting them in the relative positions where they go. That way when you're ready to put them in, you know where they go. Alright, and before I start too, the proportions I use is I have 4 level cans of the concrete. Again, I mix it kind of by eye. I know how wet and sloshy it has to be. And so 4 level cans start, and then about 3/4 can of water. And then I also keep a little bit of water on hand in case it's a little bit drier. You can add just a splash. Don't add too much, just a splash, because it might look dry when it's mixed, but once you get it in there and kind of agitate a little bit, the water will perk out of it. And another lesson learned is you really want to agitate the mold, and I'll show you that, because if you don't, this is my first one I cast, you get these bubbles all in it. So you'll see that. I'll agitate the mold. I'll show you the bubbles coming out of it, but if you don't, you'll get big bubbles there. Alright, first I'm just going to clean it out. Now on your first mold you don't have to clean it out, but on subsequent molds I recommend just running the toothbrush in there to get it all, you know, get as much of the dust out as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect, just get the big chunks out of there. So I'll show you a little bit the way I do it with the light oil. I just spray it in there like that, and I get the toothbrush and I work it into the grooves. Make sure you get the edges real good, like that, see? Or you can use motor oil, just a little cap full, just enough to wet it. So just work it in with the toothbrush, and you want a really thin coat. You don't want it, you know, thick and gooey. Now you can use a paintbrush, might go a little bit faster, but it's got a lot of detailed ridges, so to me a toothbrush does a real good job. And if you have just a little bit too much oil in there, just get a rag, wipe it out a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nice and oiled up. Now you can mix your concrete. So mixing the concrete, I put my 4 leveled cans of concrete mix in there, and I just make a little pocket in the middle. You won't be able to see it, but and then I just go ahead and pour my 3/4 container of water in there. I might hold back just a little bit, and then I use it kind of like as a cement mixer. So I just pull the dry stuff into the water. Alright. I tell you, this thing, this drywall spackle spatula putty knife thing works really good at moving the concrete around. So as you're mixing, I would rotate the bucket and get it to settle, and then just try to incorporate the wet and the dry as best I can. And it looks a little dry, so I'm going to use the rest of my little bit of water there. Doesn't take much. Like that, and then just incorporate that. Now you professional masons and concrete people are probably screaming that you should do this or that. This is a DIY project. I don't have a cement mixer. I don't do this every day, so I don't need to, you know, it's not cost effective to hire somebody to make pavers for me. So, you know, this works for me. If you're a professional and you got a better way of doing it, leave a comment. All right. That's what it kind of looks like when you get all the water incorporated into it. And the way you can tell if you've got enough water is put a little bit into your can, and then what you want to do is just kind of agitate it, right? It's hard to see in there, and you'll see the water perk up to the top. That's about where you want it. I like it a little bit wetter, but you can probably stop there. I like it where it's nice and smooth, where, you know, the water level's a little bit nice and smooth. That may be too much for some people's liking, but again, I'm after getting it nice and smooth and give me a lot of time to work it. So I'm just going to add just another splash of water into the mix and get it all incorporated, and then we'll pour the mold. Alright? I mean adding a splash. I literally mean a splash. Like that. That's about how much water I added to the mix, just enough to basically rinse out the residue in the can. Now I've let the stuff, the concrete, settle for, I don't know, 2-3 minutes, sometimes 5, depending on what I'm doing. So now we're getting ready to pour the concrete. Lay it in there like that. Now it looks dry, but trust me, it's plenty wet enough. So I'll fill the appendages first. Don't worry if it's not level. When you shake the mold, it'll level itself out. Just try to get all the edges incorporated. And again, you only want to get it about, you have to eyeball about halfway full because you got to put the chicken wire in it. So now I just rock it back and forth like this, and then just kind of bump it. I might just add, again, just another splash in the places that looked a little dry. I know pros are kind of yelling, but I want to get it, all those crevices filled. Now I'll just keep doing this probably, I don't know, 2-3 minutes, and you'll see bubbles coming through. Okay, I spent probably about 2 minutes shaking it like that, and then just rotating it, and you see all the bubbles coming out. So that means it's settled into all the grooves as much as possible, and there's, you know, you can see the water's kind of puddling on top. Don't worry about that because it's not all the way full yet. So when you put in the rest of it, that water will perk through there, and the stuff that's still in the bucket here is a little bit dry. So that water's going to be just fine. So now I'll lay in your chicken wire. And as I said before, I've staged them where they go when I was first cutting them out. And what's nice about chicken wire is very easy to form. You can pull it and stretch it. If this is sticking way out too far, you can either bend it down or you can fold it inwards to keep it from touching the edge. You don't want it too close to the edge, and you want to avoid it touching the edge if at all possible. So just like a soap. Alright. And I'm just doing it for the legs. I'm not too worried about the middle. The middle's pretty substantial. I'll give it a little shake. Looks kind of rough and uneven, right? So here's the trick. Again, shake it again. Just rock it back and forth, and it'll level itself. Magic. You'll have to do it a couple of times to see how much agitation you want to do, but you know, like I said, I do it about for 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. Now, you can get your putty knife and work all the bubbles out. This will be on the bottom, so you really won't be able to see it, so it didn't really matter. But you know, it just helps with getting the bubbles to perk through, and helps you to see if there are any voids or anything that you can trowel over. Here's another thing that you don't have to do, but if you find yourself mixing it too wet, this is a little bit on the wet side, but I've had it wetter than this and it's worked fine. But you can get a little bit of the dry stuff and just kind of dust it on top. Again, pros might be screaming, but again, I've done this with other ones and they've come out fine. The 4 level cans is just right. This is just if you come to a situation where it's too wet and you have a little bit more room, you can just sprinkle some dry stuff on, and then you want to work it in with your putty knife. And then shake it like before. And do a little shake. And it will magically level itself. And you want it to be below the level, otherwise if it runs over, you'll make a big mess, and you have little, it's called little flash chips around the edges if you overflow it too much. So you want to keep it right below level. So this is probably as close to ideal of a level as you want. You don't want it any fuller, and you don't want it any shallower. At this point, you can leave it in the shade and let it cure slowly, or you can put it out in the sun and you know, it'll cure a little bit faster. You don't want to cure it too fast or else it'll crack. And then what I'll do is I'll show you how you can tell when it's ready to flip, but you definitely don't want to flip it before it's time, because you can break it. So if you want to flip it over, or if you want to take it out of the mold before it's time, don't pick it up like this. Don't pick it up by the edges of the mold, because if you pick it up, see how it flexes? You want to have a stiff board underneath, so you flip the whole thing at once, and it keeps it straight and keeps it from breaking. Because if you try to pick it up and it flexes, concrete has very little tensile strength, especially when it's not completely cured. And if you try to pick it up or flex it, these are the weak points here and here, and it'll break. So let me show you my mistake. So this piece here, I picked it up while it was dry to the touch, but it broke here and here and here, obviously, and for some reason, I guess because the back legs are a little bit stubbier, it didn't break. But what I'll do is I'll probably just cut the back 2 legs off and just make that a headless, armless stepping stone. So just be aware of that. And plus, I didn't have any chicken wire in here, so that probably caused it to weaken also. But even with the chicken wire, it might crack if you lift it up by the mold before it's completely cured. Alright, and I'm just going to set it out in a shaded area, but out in the warmer weather, so it'll cure a little bit faster, and the water will evaporate, and when it's time, I'll put a board on top and I'll flip it over. The way you can tell that it's ready to come out of the mold or not is if you go and you rub and you see it's still flaking up like that, that means it's not ready to come out yet. Versus when it is ready to come out, you can rub it and it doesn't change color and doesn't flake out. Now you can get this out, but you have to put another board on top. You notice I've got it on a stiff board as a backing, because what happens is if you try to pick this up using just the edges of the mold, you'll crack it here, here, and here, and for some reason the back legs don't break. There we go. The key is keep it flat. You don't want to flex the mold while it's in the upside down state. So then just kind of just like that. And this is what it looks like when it's still not set. It still has that, I don't know, kind of greenish look to it, versus when it's completely dry, it's got the grayish look to it. So you can set this in the sun, or just set it somewhere in a cool, dry place, and it should set up in probably a day or so. So now I'm ready to cast another one with a mold. I don't have to wait for it to set inside the mold. Here's one that I've already flipped over, and there I'm rubbing the surface, and it doesn't granulate up, but you still have the little air bubbles, but that's not bad. That's not bad at all. So now this should be ready to be picked up, and it shouldn't break. Yeah, see? So now this one will be ready to just set to the side and cast another one.